Hey guys, George Mesa, Third Eye Edify podcast. And today's episode is sort of a sequel. It really isn't, but it will be titled as one. It's a spiritual sequel. And you know how I feel about sequels. I don't like them. I especially don't like remakes and reimaginings and re-envisionings and remasterings. They seem to bring the old stuff back with a more devious purpose, as I've pointed out many times, particularly in some of the exclusive episodes that I've had. I think some of those episodes are a little too hot for YouTube. And if you've seen them, you're a supporter. Thank you. Thank you to all my supporters, as always. Find me on Patreon. It's the best place to get all my stuff, with some exclusive perks, of course. So, unlike my usual stuff, I didn't put a little, or they're never that little, as a matter of fact. I didn't put together an outline here. I know what I want to say, and I'm sure, as in typical Third Eye Edify fashion, I'll just say and say and say and say until I'm done. But I have a lot of images to show and I have a lot of things to mention. Now, what is this a sequel to? This is the sequel to You Are What You Digitally Eat. Short number 4. And I mean that quite literally. If you grow up as what they used to call, or maybe still call, a couch potato, not sure how many people are doing it from their living room couch anymore, but if you grow up that way and genuinely don't get a sense of the real outside world, this can be very harmful in more ways than one. And it's not about just what you digitally eat. It's about the types of food you end up eating with that lifestyle, for example. It's about the advertisements that come your way. It's about the flashing of the screen, whether it's the old RCTs or CRTs, cathode ray tube, sorry. Whether it's the old CRT TVs or the new smart TVs or plasma, whatever it happens to be. It really affects you. Puts you in alpha state right away. It's the tip of the iceberg. But I've discussed that a decent amount already, as I've said. So this particular episode, I want to mention something very specific and very much a humongous part of my particular generation, me having been born in the very early 80s, relatively early 80s. Let's just leave it there. I grew up right through the arc of this. I witnessed it firsthand. All the magazines I was reading, mostly video game magazines, were telling me how wonderful it all was. All the commercials I was seeing for the movies and TV shows coming out were telling me how wonderful it all was and how it was the next thing, the next best thing since sliced bread. It might even have a whole episode on sliced bread ready to go, by the way. Just stuff down the line. So, what do I mean exactly? Do you remember when things suddenly just weren't being drawn by hand anymore? Animations, movies, TV shows, video games. Maybe some of you are surprised to find out that a lot of video games were hand-drawn, as a matter of fact. Suddenly we got these blocky polygons with really bad cameras, GORAD shading, and all this other stuff that was okay for the time, but it didn't score the same level of magic. There was an immersiveness that came with 3D, but the graphics suffered greatly at first, and I don't think they were ready to jump when they did. It felt forced. The 3D video game revolution. It felt forced. And my friends agreed whether they were thinking about it esoterically or not. The sports games, all the action games, everything. So before that, let's harken back to a time. Let's harken back a long time ago, nearly 100 years ago. The typical bluebird that appears singing to a princess, the bluebird of happiness, mentioned many times, as a matter of fact, maybe look into it, in Disney movies, in Yellow Submarine. It means something. It's there for a reason. Alice in Wonderland. Watching the animation, you'll find it to be quite amazing. And then from the later eras, the Menken, as I've heard it called, eras, composer. Little Mermaid, Aladdin, Lion King, especially Aladdin, but Little Mermaid too. Still looking beautiful. Then we move on. We've got Brave. Fun to watch. Just immediately missing something. Doesn't matter how good the voice actors are. Moana. Completely digital. Not a thought about hand drawn. Not a thought. Saving money on ink and supplies is one of the reasons. You'll see. Very strange. Video games. Darkstalkers, a fighting game. Hand-drawn graphics. This is a still frame, but imagine it in motion. I'm not going to show any video right now, but it looked very good. It looked very good. Especially for the time. Another game that really has a special place in my heart, Metal Slug 3 to be particular. The animation is unbelievable. Watching this game in action, this doesn't look like much, but believe me, it really looks quite amazing. And it still looks very good. That's what's so incredible about all this. The old Disney, those old video games, they still look amazing. Now, a lot of these games and movies were side by side. The hand-drawn stuff was still being done when the digital transition made its way. We'll talk about timing in a minute. But Crash Bandicoot. I'm sure some of you are familiar with this character. And this ushered in an era with the PlayStation. It ushered in a whole new thing. Blocky. Take a good look at these trees and their leaves. Something called draw-in. You may know or you may not know that when you interact with things of this nature, you can actually walk through them. And this means that they're simply there. They don't exist as something that you can interact with. And it automatically takes you away from the world. It automatically doesn't feel right. But most importantly, we're dealing with some pretty blocky looking stuff. And I already think the magic was kind of lost. I really do. The PlayStation. Whoops, sorry. PlayStation. 1994. Very late 1994. RU red E. The letters RU and a red E. Very clever. This truly ushered into the masses the era of interactive 3D gaming. And I really think it was the turning point. Now, what about this turning point? What does this mean to you? This is Spaceship Earth. You already know how I feel about anything that has to do with outer space. It's actually nicknamed a dark ride attraction. It had a very thorough short about Epcot Center and how it was really supposed to be the first 15-minute city. Please do go back and check that out if you're not sure. This time they've crossed the line, it's called. Hopefully if that's new information to you, I'm glad to bring it to you. And this actually came out the year I was born, 1982. To mention that twice in one episode, how did that happen? And guess who's messing with it? Guess what came along with this? Because Epcot really has its place in the evolution of this idea. Because this is the first time that the computer animation production system was used with Disney. Disney and Pixar started using it in the late 70s. But it's being claimed that the magical world of Disney and Mickey standing on Epcot's spaceship Earth was really the first time that this was used. It's called CAPS, Computer Animation Production System. And The Little Mermaid, which I flashed the villain from before, 1989, there was a rainbow sequence at the end. That was the first time it was used in a movie. And then Aladdin had a scene that used it. And, I really didn't think it looked great at the time. And that bothered me, actually. As a kid, as soon as they interjected it, it was like, what's going on here? I clearly remember the first Pokemon movie. This must have been like 98, maybe. I had the Japanese version bootleg before it came out because I was already collecting Godzilla bootlegs. So I was already in that whole zone and it was easy to get for me. So I watched it. It was actually a very decent movie. It had a lot of great themes. It was good overall as a movie, as far as I remember. The show wasn't bad either. I mean, it's a good show. It doesn't mean that it's going to last the test of time, but as far as shows go, So then, and a lot of people that I was trying to tell them about the Godzilla movies, hey, they alter them. They're not the same. And they're like, yeah, whatever. Finally, anyone that watched the Japanese version with me then got to see the American theatrical release. And they were very surprised at how far off the translation was, how far off some of the scenes were cut, names of people and Pokemon. But at the end, they stuck in a CG sequence that was not in the original for no reason. Why would they even bother, right? And it just ruined everything. Computer graphics, CG. They threw in this absolutely not hand-drawn thing, slapped it in the middle of hand-drawn stuff. Same as the Aladdin scene. I recall maybe flying out of the temple in a carpet or something, and it just doesn't look right. It doesn't look right to anybody because it's not real. It's not human. And now I can maybe start getting closer to the point of the episode here. It's not human. It's, yes, human beings' hands touch mouse and keyboard and use computers to make these things. It's not hand-drawn. It's not delivered with heart and soul. It's just not. And I know the argument can be made that it's there, that it is. But it's not. The mind and the body are present. The soul cannot thrive in that sterile environment created by this computer. It's a computer. You're looking at a computer. CAPS, Computer Animation Production. CAPS. That's what it is. Are you surprised that Disney started it? Are we surprised that NYT was involved? Are we surprised that Spaceship Earth had the honorary first go at it with good old Mickey Mouse? Not surprised at all. But you are what you digitally eat. And if you grew up maybe 10 years after me, because I maybe failed to mention that 1989, Little Mermaid, first movie to do it, big deal in the theater. I saw it twice in the theater. Thank you, Mom and Dad, for filling that request. And we were on vacation, actually. And I saw it twice they must have been thrilled. But right after that, very soon after that, about 4 years, closer to 5 years maybe, video games took the same exact turn. So now all entertainment was going in that direction. A lot of kids' cartoons, TV shows to be particular, often have fairly smaller budgets for animation than, let's say, Disney. But even the great Disney, I guess, can't have a budget for it. Or they do have the budget, definitely. And they just helped usher in this era because you are what you digitally eat. And the more fake things you see, the more fakeness you can associate with what is reality. Suddenly your world seems fake. Suddenly your world seems void of something. This is the problem. This is the problem. This is the problem too. Just the nature of it. Just letting this, just being blinding me with science, filling your head with propaganda, allowing this to take over who you are and what you do. And hopefully my audience knows me. I definitely sat in front of a television a lot. I thought I was going into this as a career. I thought this was the future. I was also duped like everyone else. But we have to be careful. If it's gonna be TV, well, at least get something with human actors or hand drawn animation. At least choose that. Then vet it. Then see if it's got spaceships and dinosaurs and images of Saturn and all the usual stuff that seems to be unavoidable for any show, which is just unreal, especially outer space lately. And maybe more than that, dinosaurs. I think dinosaurs they're kicking it hard down the line this time. Past 5 years. Something I've quoted on this show before for my own personal whatever's going on up here. If Triceratops is a very early word for one of your children, they've won. At least for now. It's very easy to fix this. But it can be hard to avoid it completely. So try to digitally eat real things. At least you can do that. Because cold turkey is pretty tough for most households in a lot of different things. I mean, there's a level of entertainment that's required for certain things, and it can slowly fizzle away. Cold turkey can be kind of crazy and silly altogether. But at least find the right things. And I think I said it on that episode, actually, the first time. It's a call to arms here. I challenge anyone, show me a kid's show, please. Find me a kid's show that does not have dinosaurs, outer space. There's plenty of other things I can name, but just find me that. That's good enough. It's, and the washing your hands for germs, masks, doctors with needles. It's pretty frequent. But dinosaurs in outer space, man, that is hard to avoid. So I'd say today was a little more of a rant than I may have produced in the past, but I really feel very passionate about this topic. I lived through it. I remember my emotions being pulled back and forth, knowing what I really liked and enjoyed the most, caring about actually seeing the word hand-drawn animation in a video game review, clearly seeing it on the big screen. Something was lost. Something was lost there. And plenty more came after that, of course, with the transition to smart TVs and all this other stuff. So much changed, but that late 80s, early 90s, that is the tipping point. That was definitely it. And for on budget, I don't think so. The budgets are higher than ever. So I really don't think saving money on ink and paper. I know how much goes into an animation, like a Disney film, like any good, well animated show. Just think of the movie Akira. I mean, that movie looks absolutely incredible still. Came out right around the same time as Little Mermaid. And it looked better. So the budget's there. Passion is there. The goodwill, the good intention is what needs to survive. So, watch what you eat digitally. even if it's just a small amount of time every week. Because what's taking over now, it seems, is just a face cropped into an image on a phone with jump cuts and subtitles. It's the complete opposite of what I'm doing. I don't have background music. I don't have jump cuts. And you guys keep coming back. It means the world to me. If you haven't already, at least join my Patreon. You don't have to pay anything to join my Patreon. You can use it just like YouTube or any other of my channels. And then you can see what the member perks are and maybe start to consider checking out some of my exclusives if you haven't yet. I think they're all pretty great, pretty impactful stuff. And there's plenty more where that came from. Some pretty exciting interviews and lots more. Thank you so much, everybody. And I'll see you next time.